I got a contract where I got 30 black GE top freezer refrigerators, 30 black glass top GE stoves, all hardly used, coming out of a multiplex unit. What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Appliance Blueprint podcast. So today we're going to talk about recapping on the dryers. I told you guys to fix. We're going to talk about a little bit about washers, and then we're going to get into sourcing, where to find a large majority of your appliances. So to get back to the dryers, one of the reasons why I told you guys to start off with the dryers, and specifically the dryers that I told you guys to start off with, is number one, they're really easy to fix. Most of the repairs are fairly cheap, and they're really easy to access, and you don't need a lot of tools in order to be able to access the components and to fix the pieces that you need. Number two, they're really lightweight. So when you're starting off on your own, especially if you're doing deliveries on your own, loading up in and out of the truck, it's just a lot easier when you start off with the dryers, especially that size. They're not nearly as heavy as the stackable dryers. Some of the older Maytag style dryers that are like solid steel. So the dryers I told you guys to start off with, those are two of the main reasons. The third reason is just like I said, that the most of the parts to repair them are fairly cheap. The rollers, the pulley, the belt, even some of the heating elements for the most part are pretty cheap. Like I said, I tend to try to recommend not to buy many things off of Amazon. A lot of the parts are really cheap and just going to cause you a bunch of problems. Doesn't mean that all the parts are. I think Blue Stars makes a decent heating element. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with me in the refurbished side. I'm sure on the service side, they're going to say everything has to be OEM. That's an argument that I've heard for quite often. The Blue Stars heating elements, they're pretty thick, and they tend to last. When I first started off, I was using a lot of the Blue Star heating elements, and I didn't have any problems with them. So now there is some other heating elements on Amazon that aren't made by Blue Stars, and I would recommend not to use those. They're very thin, they're very flimsy, they burn up really quick. You probably are going to run into a lot of problems with that. There's several other components or parts on Amazon as well that, if you're not doing your due diligence and your research to see what store it's coming from, if it's not like a reputable company, at least like Blue Stars is one of the bigger companies on Amazon that sells parts that, like I said, I would be okay with using a lot of their components. Some of the pulleys that they have, even for like Samsung dryers, Whirlpool dryers, I think that the experience that I've had with them is they've held up pretty well. Like I said, I tend to buy all my parts now from a parts place. The parts that I get from them, they give me a 1-year manufacturer warranty on it. I think they're just a little bit better quality. I haven't had any issues with them. But certainly when you're starting off, I mean, you're looking to you got to squeeze the most amount of profit out of the item. And so the key is not necessarily going to be to how expensive can you sell the item. When you're on the refurbishing side, you're trying to get the cost down to the lowest amount to acquire the item and the lowest amount to put it into the item to make the repair. That's where your profit margin is really going to come from. Because in most places, the price that you're going to be able to sell the dryer for is only going to be comparable to whatever your competition is for the most part. There's a little bit of give and take there. Just because somebody else is selling a dryer for, let's say, $150 doesn't mean that you have to sell your dryer for $150. It obviously depends on what kind of stuff you're doing for your dryer, what kind of refurbishing you're doing. There's a lot of things that go into that, the condition of your appliances. But at the same time, if the general market is somewhere between $150 $200 for a dryer, you're going to have probably a tough time selling yours for $300 unless you had some added perks built into there with an extended warranty, just a bunch of other things like that. So the general the general idea is here that you want to try to put as less money as possible into the machine so that it's still going to be reliable and last. That's where you're going to make your money. So starting off, if you have to buy, a heating element from Blue Stars or something like that from Amazon, I'd say go ahead and do it. Like I said, Blue Stars, I never had any problems with their heating elements. The place that I get my heating elements from now, they're about just as much as Blue Stars, and I think they're a little bit better quality. I get a lot of my stuff from UED, from the parts department on there. I buy a lot of stuff in bulk though, so there's a lot of other places too. If you buy in bulk, you get a cheaper deal. But when you're first starting off, you're just trying to buy a piece here and there. That would work. Some other things that I've done as well in the past was once you start actually kind of getting some dryers and flipping and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of times you can use some of the OEM parts off of the old ones that are still good. Nothing wrong with them, and you can replace it with that piece. I'm at a little bit different point in my business now, in my process. There's something else that we'll talk about in this future podcast here, and especially if you already have a business where you are consistently fixing and flipping appliances in your garage, and you're trying to get from your garage to a business. We'll talk about some other ideas and like what I'm doing now to be able to get you past that. But just to start off, like I said, start off with the dryers. They're lightweight, really easy to fix. Look for the brands that I told you. Those specific brands do a really good job of holding up and working out really well for that. The second thing that we're going to get into is talking a little bit about washers. What kind of washers do you want to look for? You can generally start off with a direct drive when you first started. When I first started with my appliances, a lot of times I was messing with the direct drives. I didn't mess too much with the high efficiency 5-light newer style top load washers. But the newer style top load washers, the 5-lights, I think they're actually probably easier to work on, in my opinion. Once you spend a little bit of time researching and figuring out what you need to do to be able to fix them. For the most part, there's generally only, I don't know, probably 4 or maybe 5 repairs that you need to be able to make on the newer style washers. Same thing with the dryers. The easiest way I think to kind of look at the process of it is to understand how it works. So with the dryer, like I said before, you're going to have heat, airflow, and tumble. So with the washer, the general process is basically you're going to have a fill, either a sense or a sensing cycle with that, but I would classify that under the fill. You're going to have a fill, an agitate, a drain, a rinse, and then a spin. So those are the basic functions of what that unit's doing. So if you know what the basic functions of what the unit is doing, it makes it a lot easier to be able to try to problem solve and figure out what part of that isn't working, and then be able to figure out the pieces for that. So similar to what we do with the dryers, heat, airflow, tumble. If you have airflow and tumble, but you don't have any heat, then you already know that you're going to want to be looking into that heat part of the circuit, right? Same thing if you have heat and airflow, but you have no tumble, you're going to want to be looking at what is the part of it that makes the dryer tumble, the belt, pulley, motor, things of that such. So with the washers, it's kind of that same thing. On a direct drive style washer, they call it a direct drive because it has a coupler. This is a design that Whirlpool came up with. I think it was like in the early 90s. It's a really great design. It was designed so that way if a customer overloaded the washer, you had this coupler piece in between the transmission and the motor, and that coupler piece would break. It's a small piece of plastic with some rubber. It was a lot cheaper to replace that than it is to try to replace a whole transmission or a whole motor from it being blown out. That's my understanding of why Whirlpool came out with that. But that's what a direct drive is. So it's directly transferring the power from the motor to the transmission. Those style of washers are really easy to work on. It was really, really popular, 90s, early 2000s. Even before that, the Whirlpool design, it's one of the best-selling washers. They're really, really easy to work on. They're starting to get outdated. There's still tons of them around, And I'm sure there's a lot of people that still say that they would rather have a direct drive washer over a high efficiency washer any time, any day of the week. And I think there is some truth to that. They definitely use a lot more water. I guess it's kind of a different school of mind too. The advantages of the direct drive washers is most of them have mechanical timer. So, you set the washer to 10 minutes, it's going to run for 10 minutes. On a high efficiency washer, it's going to depend on the amount of the weight of the clothes that's in there that determines how much water it needs and then how long the process is going to be for the clothes to wash. So the biggest complaint that I get whenever we get customers in, I hate the new style washers because it takes like an hour or 2 hours to wash your clothes. I miss my old washer where I set the time and 15 minutes later I come back and my clothes are done. One of the things I always explain to the customers is there's a big difference, and a lot of technology is advanced from the older style washers. Just because your clothes gets done in 15 minutes doesn't mean that it's any cleaner. It just means it ran through the cycle faster. The old style washers, they fill up with 15 to 20 gallons of water. It's basically like just sitting your clothes in a tub of water and shifting them around. The newer style washers, you don't necessarily need as much water because the soap that we have nowadays has so much more enzymes in it that it literally just breaks down the dirt without needing as much agitation and as much water to get your clothes clean. You also don't need as much soap. The more soap that you use, the more film you actually end up leaving on your clothes and kind of destroying your clothes. So as technology has advanced, the washers have advanced too, and so is like kind of the washing style and the way that the washers operate. But the older style direct drives, really easy to work on. Like I said, those are your basic 4 or 5 processes. So it's got to fill. Okay, so if it overfills or if it's not filling, then you're either going to have a problem right away. If you're not filling, you're going to want to be looking at your water supply, your inlet valve, wherever the water comes in. You can have the timer affecting those things too, but 9 times out of 10, especially on the older style direct drives, it's going to be the inlet valve. Something's wrong with your inlet valve. Either it's clogged or you don't have the water supply on, or the inlet valve just is malfunctioning, it's not working. If the tub just keeps like throwing water in there, even when you turn the washer off, then you definitely have a problem with the inlet valve because the valve is stuck open. As the water fills, it gets to get to a point that it is at the level of water that it should be at, and then it starts agitating. If you're having a problem with it not stopping filling and it continues to fill over, then you're going to have a problem with one of your pressure sensors, most likely, that's not working. Either the pressure tube came out or the sensor itself just isn't working, or the switch. But that's going to be the next step in that process before it gets to agitate, or where you're going to want to be looking at. Once it fills, it's going to go into an agitation cycle. So once it gets into the agitation cycle, on the older style washers, you want to be checking for the washer agitator dog ears. We just call them dog ears. I can give a quick check of that just by spinning the top of the agitator counterclockwise. If it spins freely, the agitator ears need to be replaced. If it should make that chucking sound when it comes back, that ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. So if you're turning it to the back and it catches and you gotta go forward, and then your dog ears are good. That's how you check that. But if you can spin it counterclockwise, you need to replace the dog ears. So that would be a function of the agitation. If it doesn't agitate, another function within that area is you have a lid safety switch. If the lid safety switch is broken, it's not going to go into the agitation cycle on most of the washers. There's a couple rare occasions where I think a couple of the washers will agitate with the lid open, but I don't think so necessarily off the top of my head, unless the lid had been bypassed or something. But if if it doesn't go into agitate, it fills and then it just stops and doesn't do anything. The next thing I'd be checking is the lid switch. The lid switch isn't. If the lid switch is broken, then it's not going to go into that agitation cycle. Okay, so then once it starts agitating, the other thing we want to check is to make sure the transmission is working properly, and that's going to be part of the agitation as well. Once it gets through the agitation, it's going to drain. So if you're having a problem at that point with the washer where it's not draining the water out and the water is staying full, it could also be a problem with the safety switch, or it could be something stuck in the drain pump. or it could be something with the motor. But if the agitation worked, then generally it's not going to be a problem with the motor because the motor was making it agitate. So then the problem that you're having is the drain pump. So you might have something stuck in the drain pump on those older style Whirlpool washers. It's very, very common to get a sock or something like that stuck in the drain pump. So you can you just replace the drain pump, or you just pull the drain pump off and pull the sock out. A lot of times if you get a noise in the drain when it's in the drain pump cycle, pieces of the undergarment of the bra, the metal piece, a lot of times comes off in the washer and they get stuck in the drain pump as well. And right now, like I said, guys, we're talking about the older style direct drive washers. Okay. Once you get past the spin cycle, well, there's a rinse cycle there, or the drain cycle, there's a rinse cycle, and then it's going to go into the spin. So after it drains, then you should get the spin cycle going. If it doesn't go into a drain and it starts spinning as it's draining, you have a problem with the neutral switch, the neutral drain within the transmission. You can tear the transmission apart to replace that. If you have enough of the direct drive washers that you have them, sometimes it's easier just to swap out the whole transmission because it's really not that much work. But you have a problem with the neutral switch. The water should drain out before the tub starts to spin. Okay. If the tub starts to spin and then the complaint is that it's not spinning the clothes out, or it's draining the water out but it doesn't really spin, especially if you have a lot of clothes in there, then the problem is going to be with your clutch. The clutch is worn and it's not able to grab the tub to be able to get it to spin. So those are your basic components of the direct drive style washer to be able to problem solve that. Like I said, there's tons of videos. I will get around to making some more videos. We've been really, really busy. It's tax season right now. My business is slammed. I will be trying to get around to making some more videos, but there's tons of videos on YouTube for almost every one of these repairs, guys. So that's why I haven't spent a whole lot of time trying to make the videos for that. I'm just trying to walk you through. I'm giving you a ton of advice on how to diagnose it. Diagnosing is probably one of the most essential tools that you need in the refurbished side of the business, because making the repairs is pretty easy. Pretty much anybody, there's, like I said, there's tons of videos. If you know what you need to fix on the washer or what you need to fix on the dryer, there's tons of videos that show you, that will pretty much hold your hand and show you how to fix whatever it is that you need to get fixed. So the biggest problem is, and the time saver is, those diagnosing. You have to know what's wrong with the item. Where you're going to save money and time is knowing what's wrong with it right away, and then knowing to make that repair and know that that's going to make the fix. That's where you're going to make all your money on the refurbished side as well. You're going to save a ton of your time. So walking through the washer like I just did for you guys, that's going to give you a ton of information to be able to diagnose something when it's not working at that certain point. Okay. The 5-point or 5-light washers, the new high efficiency washers, specifically the Whirlpool styles. And a lot of people say all these washers are trash. On the contrary, I disagree. They're fast movers for me, and they're very, very easy for me to fix. Even when they're new, there is some issues that, maybe after a couple of years they do break. But once you I look at it more as manufacturer clauses or manufacturer faults, I guess, right? Once you fix those things, those machines will usually last for a long time. Like I said, I've had customers that when I make those repairs, they've had it for 5 years, 4 or 5 years, it's still working great, and then they come back and they want to buy something else. So I think it is a good product. I just think that there's certain things that need to be made a little bit better. And when you make those repairs on the refurbished side, I think it's a great product, and it works well. So on the 5 lights, you're going to get it's the same thing. You're going to get the sensing before the fill, because it's figuring out how much, the weight of the clothes to figure out how much water it needs to add. Then it's going to go to the fill, then it's going to go to the agitate, then it's going to go to the drain, a rinse, a drain, and then a spin. So those are still going to be your basic things that are going to go across there. Now, the advantages to the 5 lights is, since it has a computer in it, if you use the diagnostic mode, okay, it will give you, this is where I find it a huge advantage, is because it gives you a code. So the machine's going to tell you what's wrong with it, or at least what it thinks it's wrong with it. Now, because certain codes come up doesn't necessarily mean that that's the problem, the exact problem, but it means at least to look in this area. This is the problem within this component, within this part, right? So it's really easy to do the diagnostic, how to get in the diagnostic. There's tons of videos on the washer. There's always a service manual, that you can pull out, tells you how to get into it. But I mean, basically, it kind of reminds me of playing the old school Nintendo Contra. Once you know the code, you just remember it for your life, right? Up, up, down, down, left, right, ABA, select, start. Like it just gets drilled into your head. So for the 5-light washers, it's going to be 1 click back, 3 clicks forward, 1 click back, 1 click forward. And you just do that real slow. So it's 1 back, and then 1, 2, 3 forward, 1 back, 1 forward. Okay, once you do that, all 5 of the lights are going to light up on the washer. Once you turn it again to the right, you're going to have the first light up. That's going to get you into the fault codes. You press the start button, all the lights are going to blink again, and then as you turn the selectable dial to the right, each click, it's going to tell you if there's any codes. So when you turn to the right, they'll give you a sequence of lights that are lit up. You use the tech sheet there, and it's going to you match that to it. It's going to tell you what the error is. Okay, the most common errors that are going to come up is basket speed fault or motor fault. Okay, if you get a basket speed fault sensor error, you need to replace the shifter is what the problem is. Okay, and those shifters, like I said, they're they're like $20 to $30 if I get them for. There's 2 different versions because there's the older version and there's the newer version. So one's like red and one's black. But that shifter switch is really, really easy to replace. And on the washers, what that's usually going to cause is people say that, my clothes agitate, but then it doesn't spin out. Or you could have the problem if you have a broken shifter that it'll be stuck in spin and it'll be trying to agitate. And then so the agitator won't move, the whole tub will move. And that's when you get these little, and you're like, man, it's not even doing anything, right? And that's a common problem. I always see that in the Facebook groups, and people are like, man, this thing's a piece of junk, and what the heck's wrong with it? That's a really easy repair, guys. It's like a $20 part. Switch out the basket speed sensor, or the shifter, which also has a basket speed sensor in it, and that shifter fixes that problem. Okay. The other common error is going to be an unbalanced load. Okay, the unbalanced load is going to be due to the shocks. The shocks themselves, you can very easily test it, is this: when you get the washer, if you press down on the agitator, if the thing's bouncing like a basketball, the shocks are no good. They need to be rebuilt or replaced. It should be nice and stiff. So the shocks themselves don't go bad. It's a spring. The spring itself isn't what goes bad. What goes bad is there is a piece of foam. There's like a foam insert, okay, and it's caked in grease. The grease loses its viscosity and breaks down, and so it allows the travel of that piece that holds the spring there to move pretty freely and not have much resistance. So you can either replace the springs, or there's some really good grease made by Ben's Bounce Be Gone, right? Ben's Appliances and Junk. Ben is a genius. The guy is a genius. He really is. It's a game changer. Okay. You get the grease. There's some videos. I've already posted a video in the Appliance Hustle on our Facebook group of how easy it is. You can load that grease in there. You can also replace the foam insert, rebuild them shocks. The shocks you're gonna see right away how much stiffer they are, and it's 100% rate on that. I've never had any callbacks when I replace those. It's gonna fix the problem. It's fixed it long term, way better than the OEM grease that was used for it. I can't rave enough about Ben's Bounce Be Gone. But that's an easy fix, okay? And that's gonna be if you get an unbalanced load, and that will also be a code. Another common code that you'll get, or a common problem, is the lid switch. Lid switch fault is what they'll say. And that would be that the lid switch isn't working. There's another diagnostic test in there that you can go through all the manual tests one by one until you can test the lid switch to see if it works or not. But usually if you have a lid switch fault in there, the lid switch is broke. So you're going to want to replace that. It's very easy, pretty cheap. The other code that usually comes up, which I haven't seen necessarily as a problem per se, is a stuck button. But on the Amana and older Whirlpool styles, there's like a little rubber piece that goes onto the button, and it's kind of a weird design because I've noticed over time as customers are pressing it, what will happen is the rubber can get slid past the outside kind of casing there, and then it'll get pushed in, and then it'll make the button completely depressed and be stuck like that. So you get a stuck button. So sometimes you have to fix that and clear that code. Other than that, the only other one that I see commonly too on those, I guess there's maybe two more, is a drain pump, a bad drain pump. The code will usually be a long drain, is what it's called, long drain. I would check the drain pump, see if there's any blockages in there. Again, like I said, wire or bobby pins I find a lot in those style washers. They get caught down in the propeller of the drain pump. Bra, the undergarment of the bra, the metal piece, I find a lot of those in there too. And then pens a lot of times too, pens or pencils. So, the drain pump's really easy to replace. For the most part, they're fairly universal drain pumps, as long as they have the right megahertz. We'll talk about that a little bit later in some of the other podcasts, but you replace the drain pump. The other issue with those sometimes is the splutch. So if you're getting a loud grinding noise when it's trying to agitate, or when it goes to spin and it just starts grinding really bad, the splutch needs to be replaced on the bottom. So any type of grinding noise that you're hearing is generally going to be with the splutch. That'd be the first place I would look. The splutches I would not recommend buying on Amazon. The ones on Amazon are cheaply made, and a lot of times they won't fit just right. So I definitely wouldn't recommend buying one of the Amazon ones. I would buy it from one of the other parts companies. It is going to be a little bit more expensive for the splutch. I think generally they're around like $30. But I wouldn't recommend buying the like $15 one off of Amazon, because that's probably going to break on you, and you're more likely going to have more problems. Even if you just replace that with a brand new one, you're probably going to have the same issue. Other than that, there is a belt. If you on the brand new Whirlpools, I've gotten some that are like a year old, and then they squeak really bad. And I think that the belt that Whirlpool put on there is just a little bit too tight. I don't know what it is, but if you replace that belt, it fixes the problem. The newer belts, I think they have like a blue line on them, and for some reason, I don't know if they're too tight or I don't know what it is, but they just cause them to squeak. So the belt I replace, and it fixes that problem too. Those are going to be the main diagnostic problems, though, of the new washers. Those are all pretty easy to fix. The other more common one that you might run across, I don't necessarily know if you will. If you're moving a lot more volume, you're probably going to come across a lot more of them. But if you're just starting off fixing and flipping, you might not, because most of them, the repair I'm talking about is it's like a newer style Whirlpool washer, generally within the last 3 years, where they have the pressure sensor switch fault where the transducer is bad, and you need to resolder a new transducer into it. Most of those newer ones, I think Whirlpool's finally getting around to the warranty stuff for those customers, so they've been replacing the boards. I still get quite a few of those washers coming in though. It's a really easy fix if you know how to solder. The soldering is, it's really not that hard. Ben's Appliances sells the transducers. I think they're like $15-20 a piece. Really easy fix though to solder them. And once you replace that, it'll fix the transducer. That basic error sometimes will come up in the control board. It'll come up as pressure sensor system fault. Or the easiest way to know is when you plug it in, the drain pump just starts running constantly and never turns off. And like even if you try to hold the power off button, it just doesn't recycle the computer and stays stuck that way. Those are all going to be the transducers. Really easy to repair as long as you can solder. If not, there's lots of places. Think outside the box too. Think of a cell phone place that repairs boards. I'm sure if you buy the transducer and you take it to them, I'm sure they would give you a really cheap price to be able to solder in that piece as well. Plus, there's a lot of people I've seen on Facebook. You can mail them the board. I think they replace it for like $35 or $50, and it comes with like a 6-month warranty, something like that. Or you can look into soldering it yourself. There's tons of videos on that. I don't know how comfortable you are with soldering. If you can solder, believe me, it's an invaluable tool because there's relays on dryers that you could fix. There's relays on stoves later on that you could fix. There's so much stuff that you can fix with just easy soldering. So if you can solder, you're going to be able to fix that as well. Those are going to be the most basic repairs on washers, on the 5-light washers. The advantage to the 5-light washers as opposed to the direct drives, especially if you're starting off, again, like I told you with the dryers, they're really light. The 5-light washers are also really light. These two specific items I'm telling you guys to start off with. Now, believe me, you could start off with whatever you want. If you're already working on front loads, front load or stackable dryers and washers, refrigerators, all kinds of other stuff, especially if you're in service, hey, that's awesome. But if you're just starting off, these specific items I'm telling you guys to start with are easier because they're easy for one person to be able to load, unload in a truck. You can load up a washer or one of these style washers in your truck by yourself. They're not as heavy. And if you learn to use a little bit of leverage and the dolly, you can load and unload stuff yourself out of the back of a truck. If you have a trailer, that works too. But especially if you're not at the point where you want to hire somebody to help you install something, or if you don't have somebody to help you, carry it inside to like the basement of someone's house, something like that. These items that I'm telling you guys, like the 5-light washers and and these Whirlpool dryers, they're really light, so they're easy to maneuver. Even if you're only doing curbside delivery for people, or maybe if you don't choose to do any delivery at all, and you still are going to have to help them load these items up in their truck or whatever, or their trailer or whatever they have. These items are really easy to fix, okay, for the most part. I know the newer style washers kind of scare people because there's a lot of technology, but they're really not that hard. And if you can overcome that, it's going to be a game changer for you, okay? The direct drives it's kind of a thing of the past. Everybody's shifting more towards the newer stuff. I know there's still some people that sell a ton of direct drives. I still sell direct drives if I have some. But the newer style washers is more where things are going. There's a bigger supply of them is the other thing too. There's a bigger supply, cheaper parts, and then they're easy to fix and they're lightweight. So it's just really easy to maneuver them around. So we talked about the dryers, the washers. Now let's talk about the bread and butter, the sourcing. Where can I get appliances at? That is the key. That is the secret. That is the secret to helping you expand. Where can I get my appliances? I've been fortunate enough. I've actually gotten some deals where I had appliances where I've gotten 30 almost brand new fridges, 30 almost brand new stoves, and I was able to flip that into about $3,000 profit just off of those items. And I didn't even have to make very many repairs. You can do it too. Okay, so the obvious places to look. Craigslist. Craigslist, guys. Look on Craigslist. People are always giving away free stuff on there. You got to pay attention. Look at the free boards. Search up free washer, free dryer, free appliances, unwanted appliances, broken appliances. Facebook Marketplace. You're going to see a lot on there. Join your neighborhood groups. There's a lot of people in the groups. You can put posts on there. Hey, if you have a broken washer or dryer, I will come pick it up. Or let me know if you have a broken washer or dryer. So those are two really good places. You can source a lot of stuff just off of those two items. Also, don't forget about when you sell your appliance, you want to offer a free haul away for the customers you're giving it to. That's going to be one of your number one sources. So you sell one piece, you get another piece back. That's just invaluable, especially if somebody has like two dryers. Hey, will you take my second dryer, or will you take my washer and dryer, even though I'm only buying a dryer or only buying a washer for you? Absolutely, I will take both for you. Do you have any other ones? Do you have any friends or family that have dryers and washers that need to be picked up? I will come get those too. So remember, whenever you sell something, you also want to haul away their stuff, okay? That the money is right there. The cheaper you can get it, the more your profit margin is going to be. Closer to zero that you acquire that item, the cheaper you're going to be able to make the repair, and the cheaper amount of total money you're going to have into it, and that's going to equal a higher profit margin for you, okay? It's also going to increase your net profit because you have less money into it. Another place, guys, you got to kind of think outside the box, okay? I'm giving you golden dollars here, golden dollars. Think about places that do renovations on buildings or apartments. Go talk to them, especially apartments. How many units do they have in an apartment? And how many appliances do they have? Go talk to them. You can't be afraid to get out and meet people. Talk to them. Hey, do you have unwanted appliances? I would be more than happy to come pick those up for you and get those out of your site. Let's keep them out of a landfill. Let's reuse them. Keep the earth green. Okay. Another one. This is probably going to be one of the biggest, most overlooked one, guys. Go to the scrap yards. Go to the scrap yards. Talk to the scrappers that are coming in. They're already going out and finding the stuff that you want. Hey, Mr. So-and-so, you're going to go scrap that washer. They're only going to give you $10 for it because scrap is like $120 a ton right now. So they're going to give you like $10 for it. I will give you $15 for it. You're making a $5 profit. You're getting more. And if you bring more to me, I'll give you even more. Or maybe I'll give you $20 for that washer, $20 for that dryer. It's a win for them. It's a win for you. Now you've got a way for people to just keep bringing you stuff, right? Meet 3 or 4 scrappers, 5 or 6 scrappers. If one scrapper brings you 2 appliances a day and you get 10 scrappers bringing them to you, how many appliances are you getting? Very, very easy to just start multiplying. And here's the best thing. They're the ones out there looking for the items for you. Then you tell them, hey, contact me when you get a truckload or when you get X amount of appliances. I will come and look and see what I want, and I'll give you, this amount of money for these ones, whatever. Okay? That's going to be your biggest tool to success right there, guys. Think outside the box. If you can get a hold of a scrapper and tell them, hey, I'll buy these washers and dryers, you are going to get so many appliances, guys. I'm telling you right now, that's one of the biggest keys. There's some other keys as well. There's some other secrets. But the biggest secret that I can share with you is go to the scrapyards and talk to the scrappers. You can land deals. Believe me, I got a contract where I got 30 black GE top freezer refrigerators, 30 black glass top GE stoves, all hardly used, coming out of a multiplex unit. All of them were good, didn't need any repairs, just needed to be cleaned. Some of them were hardly even used because they didn't keep the place very full. I was like, easy $3,000 profit, guys. Easy $3,000 profit. Just go pick up all these fridges. Okay, so, and then I was able to sell them for dirt cheap. Made way more than $3,000, but I'm just telling you, even selling them for dirt cheap, 30 fridges, 30 stoves. So anyways, guys, okay, that's where we're at for the sourcing. Those are your biggest places to find the sourcing right now. Next week, we will be talking more about selling. So you'll be able to fix a dryer, fix a washer, you know where to find them. Now let's talk about selling. What are you doing to sell your appliance? What does your copy look like? If you don't know what copy is, we're going to talk about it because you need to know what copy is. Copy needs to be appealing. It needs to be eye-catching. That's going to help you to move your units. So next week, we're going to talk about things that you can do to sell. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out the Appliance Hustle Facebook group. Lots of tips and secrets being shared in there. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Appliance Blueprint podcast. Have a great day.